Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 12th of May, 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So, I think today what I wanted to do, instead of just kind of talking about the craziness again of all the Terra stuff, what I wanted to do was show you guys a few charts out there. Since we've had a meltdown over the last, 24 hours across the crypto markets, I mean, ETH went back to $1,700, which was, funny enough, like almost a year ago to the day, its bottom back in May 2021. So it's kind of like funny how that worked out there. But I wanted to start with the Luna chart. This is the craziest chart I've ever seen in crypto. It's insane. Look at it. Look, I mean, for those of you listening to the podcast, you won't be able to see it. Maybe you want to go watch the video for this section. But I mean, you can imagine what this chart is. Like if I bring out the measurement tool here and I go from like where it was, I guess on the 6th of May, it was $87 to today. It is down effectively 100%. I mean, like 99.97%, right? And from all-time high, it's down 99.99%. Absolutely crazy. And the craziest thing is that obviously Luna wasn't a small market cap token. At one stage, its fully diluted value was something like $100 billion, right? Which is just really, really insane. And the UST, and not even to mention like the UST kind of like stablecoin as well. So as I mentioned yesterday and the day before, there's been a massive destruction of wealth due to this. There are a lot of people that blew themselves up, funds that blew themselves up, and it's just been absolutely crazy. But it's not just been Luna, right? There's been a bunch of other tokens that have gotten absolutely destroyed because really, as I've been saying for a long time now, they're not backed by fundamentals. They were going up due to just kind of like the fever of the bull market, so to speak, right? And I've been going on for a while about how I believe most things will underperform ETH, and not just by a little bit, they will severely underperform ETH. Now, of course, ETH has gone down as well. At $1,700, I think it was down like 60-something% from its all-time high. So ETH has not gotten away unscathed at all, but it's faring much, much better than everything, pretty much everything else. And I also think that it's going to have obviously a much better recovery because of the fact that there are tons of fundamentals behind Ethereum and ETH as an asset as well. So what I wanted to do just quickly was to run through a few charts with you guys to kind of illustrate my point here. So this is the Luna USD chart, but if I type in Luna ETH, right, and you can see kind of like the craziness here, like on Binance, it's hilarious. Like I can't even like, you can't even see kind of like the gains that Luna ETH made, but it actually made like a fair bit of gains against ETH during its kind of like mania. Like if we take it from here, right, which is I guess February to its peak in March, it kind of like doubled. And this is this isn't going back that far. If we can go back further, maybe on KuCoin, or KuCoin, sorry, we can go back a bit further. It did kind of like outperform ETH by about 4x, I guess since kind of like August of last year or something like that, right? And obviously, like this is the most extreme example, but it's basically dead against ETH now, right? Let's look at some of the other ones, and I'm going to be focusing on like a lot of the popular L1s because that was a very popular trade, especially late last year. Let's look at Solana here, right? Solana against ETH. And this is just kind of like the daily chart. It performed quite well. Like it performed really well, actually. If you were able to kind of like buy it from the bottom here or go kind of like, if you were like the perfect kind of like trader, you had a crystal ball and you bought Solana back in January of 2021 and you kind of like sold it in September of 2021, you outperformed ETH by about 24x, right? But most people didn't do this like at all. And most people don't hold until kind of like, most people don't hold until kind of like goes up this much and stuff like that. So I'm not going to take it from there. What I like doing is just kind of looking at it from all-time high to what it is now. And that's because most people actually enter, like the retail noobs and kind of like the people who aren't really paying attention, mostly enter around kind of like the mania phase. And the mania phase, you can kind of see in August of 2021 is kind of like where it really, really took off, right? And kind of like ended in kind of like September of 2021 against ETH. But if we take it from the all-time high here and we kind of like go to where it is today, Solana, which is considered one of the more, I guess, like quote-unquote robust L1 ecosystems because it has more money behind it, Solana is down 60% against ETH, right, from here. So this is September to May this year, right? So it took a while, but like it's basically been down only since then with a few kind of like bumps here and there. Next up, we have one of the other popular L1s, which is AVAX or Avalanche, right? Also down since kind of like November against ETH. I think it's down 55% or something like that. Also had obviously a big run there, and it's still up from its kind of like all-time low. But this is just kind of like the recent price action. A few others. I mean, you got FTM Phantom, which was quite popular as well. That is pretty much completely wrecked against ETH. Like from all-time high, it's down like 86% against ETH. So these are just the recent ones. Now I want to show you guys the old cycle ones against ETH, like the 2017, 2018 era hype coins. Let's look at EOS. EOS against ETH on Bitfinex is probably going to be the best chart here. And I'm going to have to go switch to the weekly for this. It is pretty much completely down only and just completely wrecked. Like even against its kind of like all-time low, I mean, it's setting new all-time lows all the time against ETH. From all-time high against ETH to today, it is down 98%. Now, for those of you who were around in 2017, 18, EOS was the most hyped thing in the industry at the time. It was, called the Ethereum killer. And there were major backers behind it. Everyone was kind of like getting on board with it. And it's down 98% against ETH now, right? Neo was another kind of like very popular other L1 during kind of like that period as well. From its all-time high to today, it is down about 96%. I think even more than that if I go here. 96%, right? Neo.eth. IOTA, another very popular one back then as well. If we go here and kind of like look at as far back as I can go, it is down 95% against ETH, right? Now, I'm not going to keep going through this, but you get my point. Like, it is extremely hard to outperform ETH over the long term. You can do it over the short term, but you have to consider the fact that even doing it over the short term is very hard because you have to pick kind of like the right time to buy it and the right time to sell it to kind of like exercise those profits or realize those profits there. So I just kind of like wanted to run through a few of those things to illustrate to you guys like what I've been going on about for a while now. Obviously not investment advice. I'm not telling you that you should only buy ETH and that's it, right? You can go and buy other things. But what I've been saying for a while is that you need to have kind of like your degen stack and kind of like your accumulation stack. So you shouldn't just be putting all of your money into the degen stack, right? And kind of like throwing it all into something and betting the house on something. I mean, you can do that if you want, but in my experience, most people, the vast majority of people blow themselves up doing that. So it's kind of like not a really, strong strategy, right? So you can have your degen stack, you can have your kind of like long-term ETH accumulation stack, and then you can have like a day trading stack if you want, right? You can kind of like tier that out and maybe you have like 10, 20% in a degen stack, depending on how degen you want to be, and depending on your wealth level as well. Like I feel like people that have, a lot more money than kind of say you've got like 7 figures already, right? Unless you're like a peak degen, most people that already have 7 figures are not going to be YOLOing that into the most degen shit out there, right? They're probably going to take a small part of that stack and do it if they want to, or they're probably just going to throw it into ETH or even BTC and just be like, this is kind of like what I'm going to do. This is my easy investing stack, and I'm just going to leave it at that, right? So to speak. So I feel like taking all that into account, this is just like me illustrating to you guys why it's so hard to outperform ETH. And like, I didn't just focus on things that were small. Like IOTA, EOS, and Neo were the biggest L1s at the time back then. They had huge shill armies behind them. They were really, really hyped up. But, those in the know knew they were kind of like built on shaky foundations, and they didn't survive the bear market of 2018, 2019. They got completely flushed out. And then obviously we got this new crop over the last couple years that have come, but they're beginning their flushes right now. As I just showed you those charts, guys, like this, like I'll go back to the Solana ETH one. This is the weekly here. This isn't over. I don't think it's over at all, right? I don't think it's over for the other ones that I showed, AVAX. I think Phantom is pretty much dead. Like, I don't think it's coming back at all. I mean, it's completely wrecked. Like, it's really bad, right? There's a few others out there, like Nia, for example, as well. That's kind of like not really done anything, right, against ETH here. And this is kind of like 2020. And you can even go back into further things. Like, I actually think the Cosmos ecosystem isn't bad or is quite interesting and things like that. Obviously, Terra was part of that, but not anymore, I guess. But you can see here, like, I mean, this is really crazy. I mean, can I go? I think I can go back further than this. This is, I think that was, if I go to Kraken, maybe I can go back even further. But you can kind of like see, I guess, like all the way back here from its all-time high in December of 2019. Even Atom against ETH is down like 87%, and they're still around. They're still building. They've still got some usage there, but still, right? So kind of like, and I mean, even if you kind of like look at BTC against ETH, like I mean, ETH has been going up against BTC for kind of like for most of its life, basically, except like the brutal bear market where it kind of like went down. You can see here it's actually still on the uptrend, which is pretty cool as well. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to stop with the charts for now. Just something that I wanted to illustrate for you guys. I thought it was a fun little exercise to do. I'm sure some of you guys have lost money on these things or lost ETH on these things. Look, take it as a learning experience. I lost ETH on things too in my early days, guys. Like like if I had to count the amount of ETH that I've lost, it'd probably hurt, right, at this point in time. But I learned from those mistakes. I made ETH on other things, and I've just kind of like been adding to my long-term ETH stack as time goes on. And some of you will know I said it on Twitter before. I bought that ETH that I was saving the fiat to buy since January of this year. So I kind of like I like before then I was doing my daily ETH buys before January. Then I kind of like stopped my daily buys. I was still buying here and there whenever I could, but I was stacking a bunch of fiat because I'm like, you know what? If there is a chance ETH goes under 2K and we retest that 1700 bottom again, I want to be able to buy that with a healthy chunk of fiat. And I did that today, which is pretty cool. Like, I don't know if 1700 is going to be the bottom. I don't know if we're going to go lower than that, but I felt pretty comfortable, you know, putting that kind of like fiat in there and buying. It was kind of hard to kind of, I guess, like hold that position and hold that fiat while I watched ETH go back to 3,600 during that time. But just given everything that was going on, it was very hard for me to turn like short to medium term bullish because of the fact that we had all this macro uncertainty. And then obviously all the stuff that happened over the last few days has kind of like kicked in and just made it even worse. But anyway, I'm going to leave that at that with the prices for now. There's a bunch of other things kind of like to get through today. I did want to kind of like just say that the craziness of the last 72 hours, I guess 3 or 4 days, has made me feel like I've aged 10 years in 3 days. I've been nonstop at my screen, basically just following all of this. I slept properly. I think that's the only other thing I did rather than kind of like watch this. I think I went grocery shopping as well, but I was on my phone the whole time. But yeah, it's just been a crazy last 3 days, guys. The craziest experience I've had in crypto, to be honest. I know I said that March 2020 was crazier. I think it was still, but the thing is that it didn't feel like it lasted this long. It felt like it lasted like that one big crash, and it had come after like a really long period of time of kind of like the prices not doing anything. So I don't think I felt like what I do now, but I mean, nothing went to zero, right? Like a big, like Luna's, I was about to say BitConnect, Luna's going to zero, I mean, it's pretty much at zero now. Like whether it it's at 2 cents right now. Whether it goes to zero or not is kind of like pointless at this point, because everyone who's ever invested in Luna is down right now. Like, and most people are down massively, so it doesn't even matter at this point. But yeah, it feels like I've aged 10 years in 3 days, to be honest. And I guess like finally on the Terra stuff here, it actually came out today that Do Kwon was one of the pseudonymous co-founders behind the one of the other failed algo stablecoins called Basis Cash. So he'd done this in the past. Like, oh god, I said this to you guys, like, I don't know, yesterday or the day before on the Refuel. This guy belongs in prison, and honestly, I truly believe that he's either going to end up in prison or he's going to end up in lawsuit hell. In my eyes, his life is over. There is no way he recovers from this, because he not only burnt, you know, a few people, he burnt like a lot of people. He lost people, tens of billions of dollars, entities, funds, people from everywhere, like normies, regulators are going to be gunning for him. Like, guys, like I honestly believe his life is over. I mean, the fact that he put out a tweet thread yesterday saying that they're going to kind of like just let Luna go to zero and then start again, like, that's not happening. Like, I mean, it's not happening with Do Kwon at the helm, right? Or Terraform Labs maybe at the helm. I think if the Terra community was to get together and try to spin something new up again, maybe they could do that. But I truly believe Do is finished. Like, this is, I don't know how you come back from this at all, right? So like maybe I'm wrong there, but like that's at least what I believe, especially because he's done this in the past as well. So just crazy. I mean, the craziness just keeps going at this point. It's just insane to me. But this is what keeps crypto entertaining. Like, seriously, the last 3 days in crypto have probably been my most fun that I've ever had in this industry. I'm still in disbelief, guys. Like, I'm actually in disbelief that everything played out like the bears said it would, about kind of like Luna collapsing. But I think it played out much faster than they thought it would. And I think that no one can even just kind of like come to terms with the fact that something that was worth $100 billion just a month ago is now worth basically zero. Like, come on, guys. Like, it's crazy, right? And honestly, it wasn't like an outright Ponzi kind of like scam. Like, people actually believed in this thing, thought it was a legitimate kind of like product. I'm sure even Do Kwon thought it was a legitimate thing and that, it was working. This is all well and good. And I don't think he even saw this coming, right? I mean, he definitely didn't see this coming. Obviously, his ego didn't allow him to see this. But yeah, just that's I don't think this is the end of the Terra saga here, but I think that, over the next few days, things are probably going to quieten down a bit. I mean, the kind of like most, I guess, degen stuff, or I shouldn't say degen stuff, but the most kind of like, I guess, crazy parts are probably behind us. But yeah, just more crazy news that came out today, which I thought was pretty funny. All right, so there were some people asking in the Discord channel for me to cover this today. So due to the UST depegging event, a bunch of people took advantage of this to spread fear about other stablecoins. And we saw USDT, which is obviously Tether, which is obviously the most popular stablecoin, depeg to the downside quite a bit. I think on some exchanges it got to 90 cents. Now, I want to explain something to you guys. I know that there's a lot of drama around USDT and Tether and that people can't kind of like, that Tether's not backed one-to-one by dollars and people aren't able to withdraw, blah, blah, blah. But people are able to withdraw. People are able to redeem USDT for real dollars. And because of that, and it's not an algorithmic stablecoin, it's not going to do what UST does. But that didn't stop people from taking advantage of this and spreading fear. And people lost a lot of money on this depeg because it's already back to $1, I think, or close to it, right? And there are some other stablecoins that kind of like got out of whack to the upside as well, such as USDC, which is even stupider because USDC is 100%, like there's no kind of like there's no doubt to be had here. That's 100% backed by kind of like real money in a bank account. And DAI, I mean, you can see DAI's backing on chain. The reason it it kind of like pegged up was also silly. It's just a bunch of silliness going on, guys. Like. And this isn't the first time USDT has depegged either. It's done this in the past. But as I said, it is fundamentally different to something like UST. It is not an algorithmic stablecoin. It is a centralized stablecoin backed by dollars, and people are able to redeem it. Now, I'm not going to go into the theories about it not actually being backed and how shady it is and stuff like that. The same is true for the same holds true for stuff like USDC, where you can actually back it, right? They're not algorithmic stablecoins. They're not going to suffer the same fate as UST. At worst case scenario, if something like Tether was to kind of like implode or explode or kind of like depeg really harshly, there are enough centralized exchanges with skin in the game with Tether to just backstop it, right? And they would, right? And the thing is, as I said, like I believe USDT or at least Tether has most of the money, maybe not all of it, available immediately to redeem these sorts of things, but that's still much better than basically what happened to UST, which is essentially pretty much zero. I mean, like that whole ecosystem is just pretty much zero at this point, right? So yeah, just wanted to kind of like cover that, and there's no reason to kind of like panic there. But as with everything, holding anything in crypto comes with risk, like even stable coins. So you just kind of like need to be aware of that and need to be aware of what you're getting yourself into, as I always say. All right, so final thing about the markets. I put out this tweet today where I said, Ponzi's collapsing, funds blowing up, retail getting wrecked, quality assets getting giga oversold, people reaching the acceptance stage of grief, and OGs welcoming the pain. This is how bottoms are formed. Surviving this should now be your only objective. Don't blow yourself up. I personally feel like it's like the end of 2018 right now in terms of sentiment, news, price action, all that sort of stuff. And that's what prompted this tweet. The thing is that crypto has a way of humbling everyone and blowing up a lot of people before it can actually form a bottom. And that's exactly what's been happening over the last few days. Is this actually going to be the bottom? Are we going to trend lower? I can't say for sure, but it certainly feels like it to an extent, right? I mean, BTC went to 25K. Like that was crazy. I didn't think it would go that low, but like on that kind of like dump there, but it did. And kind of like when you're looking at this as well, I think it's dangerous to assume that just because a bottom gets formed, everything's just going to trend up again. No, guys. Like, I mean, ETH formed that $80 bottom in December of 2018. And it didn't really start being in a proper bull market again until like mid-2020 when it crossed over, I think, $360, which was its 2019 high. So, we could bottom now and then we probably, can just range here for a while, right? Like it could go on for a year, it could go on for 2 years. I've got no idea, to be honest, guys. Like I've got absolutely no idea how long it's going to take. But I do want to kind of like warn you against thinking that just because the market looks like it's formed a bottom, that everything's going to go up only again, and we're going to go straight back into an amazing crypto bull cycle within 6 months. That's just not going to happen in my eyes. Maybe ETH kind of like does have a run and does have positive price appreciation due to like merge hype and stuff like that. As I've mentioned like plenty of times in kind of like the short term, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see how that kind of like plays out. But yeah, as I said, kind of like in my tweet here, I think that I'm seeing all the signs that I usually see. I feel like it's the end of 2018, but it could go further down from where it is today. I don't know. The macro environment is very different. Actually, that's one thing I should touch on, the context around where we are today versus 2018. I think there's kind of like positive and negatives. Negatives is that the macro environment is vastly different to 2018. It is very, very bad. It is hopefully improving over the next few months, but it's been very bad over the last few months, right? And also, as I mentioned before, in 2018, people were questioning Ethereum's very existence, whether it would actually ever come back. That's why ETH went down 94%. What's the use case for Ether now that ICOs are done? What's the use case of Ethereum? Blah, blah, blah. No one's saying that anymore, right? No one's questioning that. Everyone's actually flocking back to Ethereum now because they're like, what's the use case of these other alt L1s? Like, they're all like shitty or blowing up or useless, and we have L2s here now, and we have like the L2s improving all the time. So there's no one questioning Ethereum's existence now, and there's no one questioning ETH's value accrual besides Bitcoin maximalists, but no one cares what they think anymore. So I think taking the context and kind of like realizing that things today are vastly different to what they were in 2018 is good. But at the same time, that's on the fundamental side of things. I think when you look at it from like a market's perspective, I definitely get a similar feeling to what I had at the end of 2018 there. So just something to keep in mind on that one. All right, so there was a bit of talk about the stETH token losing its peg to ETH on Curve today, where it's at 0.98 ETH instead of kind of like 1-to-1 here. And Hasufl put together a great thread explaining why this is. You can go read this thread, but the TLDR is that this is just basically speculators, kind of like speculating on these things. And the thing is that if you were to buy 0.98, if you were to buy stETH today, you'd be getting a 2% discount to ETH when withdrawals come to fruition early next year, because you can always claim 1 ETH for 1 stETH, right? Like once withdrawals are enabled, because stETH just represents staked ETH. So essentially, if you were willing to wait a year and say stETH went to 0.9, right, instead of 0.98, you would make a near risk-free 10% return on this kind of like trade if you were to buy stETH instead of ETH. And the thing is that like it could go back to peg on market as well. So you could buy it at 0.9 and then it could go back to 1 on the market, and you can kind of like do that. But even if it didn't, at time of withdrawal, you would be able to claim that ETH from the beacon chain directly. So good to keep in mind when looking at things like this. I think this kind of like depegging is not a danger for the stakers. It is a danger for people that are leveraged up and kind of like using these leveraged staking products, because it means that they can get liquidated because their LTV kind of like goes down. So if you are using one of these leveraged ETH products that uses stETH in the background, make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into. As I said, like I've talked about these products before, like ETH Maxi and ICETH from Index Co-op. But I've said to you guys, like, you need to understand that these products are leverage products. They can get liquidated, and kind of like you need to understand all the risks around that. But anyway, I'll link Kazu's tweet thread in the YouTube description. You can go check it out for yourself. All right, so Bartek from L2 Beat has another great thread today, this time about bridge censorship resistance. So he starts the tweet by saying, is your bridge censorship resistant? Most cross-chain bridges operate in a lock mint mode. You lock an asset on a source chain and mint a wrapped or synthetic asset on the destination chain. Then he goes on to say, good bridges should never mint a synthetic without you locking your asset first, and should never allow you to lock an asset without minting the synthetic. And then he goes on kind of like explain all of this and how this all works here. Highly recommend giving this thread a read. Obviously, bridges have been a big topic of discussion for a while now, and I've spoken about it a bunch on the refuel and the risks associated with it. But I think that kind of like you need to be aware of the fact that there can be censorship on these chains, and there can be kind of like on these bridges, and there can be a bit of fuckery, for lack of a better word, on these kind of like bridges that can put your funds at risk. So you always need to know what you're getting yourself into, and I think Bartek does a great job of explaining that in this thread here. All right, so a new Dune Analytics dashboard that I came across recently from the Dune Analytics account itself called the State of Ethereum Quarterly. So this dashboard basically recaps kind of like each quarter in Ethereum, and you can kind of like see the recap of Q1. So it shows things like revenues for Ethereum, the ETH burns, kind of like the ETH price, daily active addresses for the quarter, all these sorts of stuff. There's a lot to go through here, guys. I'm not going to go through it now, but I'm going to link this in the YouTube description for you guys to check out. But this is the stuff that I focus on. This is the fundamentals at the end of the day. Like, this is Ethereum's actual fundamentals, or at least some of them. I mean, it's funny because whenever people talk about fundamentals, they kind of like always go or bias the on-chain fundamentals, but there are so much more than that. I mean, there's the on-chain stuff, which you can see here on this Dune Analytics dashboard, but there's also a lot of the off-chain stuff, right? Like developers coming into Ethereum. Ethereum's kind of like a kind of like adoption, and it's kind of like narratives outside of crypto, and its status within kind of like the wider, I guess, like wider society. So there's a lot of different metrics to kind of track here, but this Dune dashboard gives you a really, really great way to track all the on-chain metrics. So definitely go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description. So Summer Esat has published a bunch, his first guide in the series of his migration guides of migrating from Prysm to Nimbus. So you can kind of like go give this a read. If you are running Prysm right now and you're looking to migrate across that to kind of like, I guess, like improve client diversity, this guide is for you. It is quite a long and kind of like detailed guide, and it'll show you how to go from Prysm to Nimbus, step by step, all the commands that you need to know, and everything like that. And Summer Esat has been doing these guides for quite a while now, and they're actually really, really good. So you definitely should check this out and give this a read if this is kind of like you. And he'll be doing other guides as well, going from like Prysm to Lighthouse, Prysm to Teku, and Prysm to like pretty much everything else. But this one focuses on Nimbus, which I thought was pretty cool because I think Nimbus is the smallest client right now, maybe on kind of like the consensus layer front. So it's good to see kind of like Summer doing this to encourage more people to kind of pick up the Nimbus client. All right, finally here, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to this live stream that Bankless is doing on Friday at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time and 3:30 p.m. Eastern time in the US. It's going to be called a Dive into Danksharding with Tim Biker as the moderator, Vitalik Buterin, Dankrad Feist, and Proto Lambda as the panelists. Guys, like, I'm looking forward to this more than I've looked forward to a lot of things, simply because of the fact that, look at this panel. This is a stacked panel. Like, for those of you who don't know, I mean, you probably know who these people are, but I'm just going to say it anyway. Tim Biker, like a legend within Ethereum at this point, like coordinates all the core dev stuff. Like just you know, without him, Ethereum would be in a much worse place. Vitalik, I don't even need to say anything, right? Dankrad Feist is the kind of like father of Danksharding, which everyone's been talking about lately, and is an Ethereum researcher at the Ethereum Foundation. He's been doing a lot of great work for a while now. And Proto Lambda is also very close to the Danksharding effort. Now works at actually Optimism, but he's a kind of like a previous Ethereum core dev and working on scaling and research and stuff like that, but he's still doing a lot of that stuff as well. So I couldn't think of a better set of people to actually talk about this stuff. I'm super pumped for it because Proto Danksharding is coming in Shanghai, hopefully, which is after the merge in that network upgrade there. So if you want to kind of like learn about that and dive deeper into it with, you know, the best people to learn from, definitely go, I guess, like check this out once it's live, or set a reminder to watch it live, since this is going to be a live stream. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for today. So yeah, thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.